Welcome back to another episode of the MX Endurance Podcast, where we look at everything that's been happening in the world of endurance sports. My name is Tim Ford, and I'm joined by the man to the left of that cat, James, the penultimate legend, the sexy shepherdess, the sexiest voice in triathlon. If you don't know what I'm talking about, head to our YouTube channel to find out. James Bale, how you going, Jimbo?
Yeah, I'm well, mate. I'm well. I'm on the continent, as you can see, with my feline friend.
I mean, it's very French. It's a very French setting. I can tell.
Yeah.
All I'm getting is vibes of France.
I've replaced the yellow jersey I normally have hanging behind me with a calendar of cats.
Cat.
Yeah.
You're in Berger right? country, mate. You're in Berger country.
How are you, buddy? You okay?
I am okay, James. It has been a frustrating afternoon. I've had a series of unfortunate events that culminated in me trying to go to the pool to do my swim session, and then literally it started to have a thunderstorm, which meant the pool closes. So it's just been one of those days where nothing seems to have gone according to plan. But it is podcast day, mate, which is always a positive for me. And unlike last week, I think it's going to be a breezy episode because I sat down with Christopher McCormack yesterday and recorded a nice little interview with him about Sub7, Sub8 and a few other little bits and pieces that will drop in later in the episode. But Jimbo, before we get to that, this podcast is the official podcast of MX Endurance, world's premier endurance sports community, created by four-time world champion Chris McCormack. James, what's something you like about MX Endurance?
Well, I mean, as I'm going to say two things this week, because the first would be the still building momentum towards our training camp in the US, in Utah, in May, which is going to be all kinds of fun. But also, I want to add in, I like seeing when members on the Facebook page buy their new bikes, because I saw Neil went and picked up his S-Works yesterday or the day before, and it was a pretty picture of a very pretty bike. He made a good choice.
Yeah, you're about to see some good bike porn come from me too, because I've got these two bikes behind me, but that one above is about to get replaced any day now. That new speed concept is on its way to me. I saw it have been painted and put online.
Track though, mate.
What did I say?
No, you did. You did.
Good,
I'm just saying it's a track, isn't it? It's
I know, amazing.
Amazing
bikes, mate. I mean, does Specialized still do triathlon, mate? Because I see they keep dropping all their athletes, but does anybody still ride Specialized? I'm not sure, mate.
Yeah, they just sponsor me now. That's why they had to drop all their other pros, because they couldn't afford me.
You've actually got the S shaved into the back of your, like the only bit of hair on your body is in the back of your head, and it's the S-Works S. Very stylish. But again, you're on the concept. You're heading to a bit of a triathlon hub this weekend, aren't you?
Yeah, man. As of tomorrow morning, I'll be in Girona with Joe Skipper doing a photo shoot for Argon. So it'll be a good weekend. We've got a lot to cover, a lot of expectations from various content producers across the weekend. So there's going to be a lot coming out of this weekend. So keep your eyes peeled on Joe's Instagram page.
Now tell me this. Are you going to go to Frodo's Cafe? That's the pressing piece of thing that I need to know.
I've already said that I'm going to get you a coffee cup from his cafe.
I will be doing that. Actually, see, I'm frazzled, mate. I've had a bad day.
I will be doing that, mate. I will be in attendance at some point across the weekend. But I've also, I'm going to be doing I'm going to do a bit of swimming, I think, while I'm there, and I've booked myself a nice sports massage for Monday afternoon. So that's going to be fun, and do some socializing and some generally Gironering around.
Well, I need to stop you for a little minute, unpack something you just said, because you said a nice sports massage that's going to be fun. When's the last time you had a sports massage, mate? Because that is not the way that I would describe it when I have a sports massage.
No, you're right. Sports massages are not fun, and I misspoke there. But mine will be, because I have a broken ankle and various bits of me, and so the masseuse is going to go easy on me. But there are two of us going for the sports massage, so the other individual is going to suffer hard.
Well, enjoy that, mate. Let's get into it now. The news this week, James, is a bit all over the place. But the first thing, I'm not necessarily. I mean, I think that the news we're reading is important. It's something worth talking about. But I had a bit of an issue with how this article was presented this week, because I'd seen the subject of this come up on social media, and I was like, yep, it's just a thing anyway. And then I went to Try Today, where I think do a great job of finding the news, and I saw this headline. I was like, shit, what's this about? And I opened, I was like, oh, it's that thing that I read earlier in the week.
You didn't write that headline, did you? That is the headline that came off the article, because I read it and was like, correct. That's a bit much.
That's exactly why I wanted, because I'm going to allow our readers to hear the headline, and then I will go through the news, and you can tell me what they think, James. You are the listener this time, so you get in the headset of our listeners, because the article comes from Romy Louis van Schooneveld from Try Today, as I said, and the headline is Triathlon Australia CEO steps down after the fixing scandal. A few months ago, news came out about a match-fixing scandal at Triathlon Australia, creating an unfair advantage for some of their athletes, while others were left behind and had a harder time earning their spot for Tokyo 2020. While the matter is still under investigation, Triathlon Australia's Miles Stewart has just announced his stepping down from the position as CEO. He will, however, remain involved in the sport as he continues his involvement within the World Triathlon Board as an executive member. He said, I've already volunteered my time whilst in Montreal for the upcoming Sprint World Championships to support our Australian age group team and can't wait to be on that side of the fence. Stewart, a former successful pro triathlete himself, said about his career shift. The CEO role has enabled me to return to the sport I love with the skills and experience I had gained in commercial roles, something not all former elite athletes are given the chance to do. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time leading the sport and proud of the strong position the sport has achieved, and I'm excited about the opportunity to now move back into my other passion, property, at a general manager level, he said. Stewart will stay in his position until May. In the meantime, COO Tim Harradine will act as interim CEO. The Triathlon Australia board wants to thank Miles for his 6 years of outstanding service, and he leaves out with our thanks and best wishes. Michelle Cooper speaks on behalf of the Australia board. He has been a passionate part of our sport for more than 30 years, and we know he will continue to add great value in the future. Miles joined the organisation as we emerged from significant financial volatility and was the right CEO for the phase of growth and development the sport has seen through his tenure. Much in the sport landscape has changed, and Miles provided important connections into the sport coupled with commercial acumen to chart the way forward, Cooper states. James Bale, that's the end of the article.
That's quite a tenuous link they've gone for there, isn't it? I mean, it's the whole correlation doesn't prove causation type thing. It's kind of like headline James Bale's in Europe after Prime Minister lies to Parliament. You know, those two things are they both exist as truths on their own, but they're not linked in any way. Now, not necessarily linked. Obviously, this with Miles Stewart being the CEO of Triathlon Australia, he obviously. There's more of a link between me and the Prime Minister and him and Triathlon Australia, but I don't think this article or headline does the story any justice at all. I think if you want to do an independent investigation piece as a journalist into what happened with the fixing scandal and what happened around that, and how high up those decisions went, and what knowledge the governance of Triathlon Australia had, then that is a story in itself. But linking the fixing scandal to his decision to step down as CEO, I find that a bit, that's a bit, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but I don't know.
Bullshit?
Crass. Yeah, bullshit will do it, yeah.
Bullshit? I genuinely, the reason I put this in, firstly, because I think Miles Stewart has done a lot of, Miles Stewart is a legend within Australian triathlon. Like, to say he was a pretty good pro triathlete doesn't really, sum up. Miles Stewart was an incredible professional athlete. I knew that I was going to cover the fact that he was stepping down as CEO anyway, because I thought it was worth talking about. But then I saw this, and it literally made me do a double take. And I was like, oh my God, have I missed something? And I like to think I've got my finger on the pulse a little bit, especially about stuff that happens in my own country. So I saw this headline, and there was this moment of like, have I missed something? So I was like, shit, okay, jump straight into the article, and I'm reading. I'm like, okay. I mean, the headline is technically correct. Following that thing, this happened. But as you said, you could literally say that about so many other things. Like, I find it very strange.
Tim Ford stays in Sydney after Australia retain the Ashes. It's like, all right. I don't see what they're trying to get from this, because I read the headline like yourself, and I was expecting to read an article that said links have been found linking Miles Stewart to the fixing scandal.
Or it's the reason.
Or the reason. And so therefore he's stepped down and said, my post is untenable due to failures of the organisation under my watch. But none of that. No, he's just stepping down to go back into his property business. Jobs are good.
Do you think they know something that we don't know? Because again, I don't think I would feel comfortable putting out that headline. I mean, the few times that we've had what we thought are like scoops, we've been very careful to be like, we are not sure about this. This is what we've heard. We have sources that we can back up. Not to just be like,
no.
Like this, I mean, there are still things we know, James, we've heard through doing this show that we've not spoken about on the podcast because we haven't been able to verify them enough.
I don't think they know anything that we don't know. I think it's clickbait. It's a clickbait headline. And I mean, shock horror journalistic organization puts out disingenuous headline to catch people's attention. It is just the way of the world.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, let's move on from that. Again, sorry, we should say congratulations to Miles Stewart for a great career with Triathlon Australia. It sounds like he's moving on to great things, and he'll still be involved in the sport because he is on that executive board for World Triathlon. So I can't wait to see who they pick next. I messaged my dad, and I was like, Dad, there's a position at Triathlon Australia. If you want to go CEO, mate, you can be. I'll be the puppet master, and you can be my marionette puppet, pulling the strings for me. Triathlon Australia. He declined. He said, "Nah, mate.
Yeah, you're not going to put your hat in the ring."
Mate, I've got enough jobs as it is, to be honest.
Yeah.
Plus,
actually,
somebody messaged me. They're like, I'd support you.
I hear your new coach is putting you through the ringer, isn't he? I'm surprised you've got any energy left to do anything.
Fucking hell, mate. There was a session yesterday that fucking nearly buckled me.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I saw that picture you put on. I saw that picture you put on Instagram. It looked like one of those photos. You know when you those pictures where you age people up, the app thing. It looked like one of those. I was like, oh, fucking nice.
We see, I've got this thing now. So it's the Whoop that's telling me all about my fatigue and everything. And it was not happy with me. It's like,
I bet.
You're an idiot, basically. Yeah. I mean, not in so many words, but anyway, let's move on to the next thing. You touched on this last week, Jimbo, and it happened. It actually happened before I think we'd released the episode, but we had the winter, what was it? The winter triathlon thing happened, whatever it was you spoke about.
Yeah.
It's where Jan Frodeno's training at the moment. It's where Cam Worth lives. It's called
Andorra.
What's it called, James Bale? Andorra, I think.
There you go. I think so.
Teamwork, mate. Teamwork. And I could have just read because it's literally on the third line. Athletes from Italy and Russia claim world winter duathlon titles. This comes from Sarah Wasner-Flynn at Triathlete magazine. Sarah incorrectly said in her article this week that Mark Allen was on our show last week. He was not. We spoke about what he said on our show. Mark Allen, we would love to get you on the show. I messaged you on Instagram, asked him to come on the show, and he sent me a thumbs up. And I was like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. Is that a yes? Tell me, Mark. Italy's Franco Pesavento and Russian Triathlon Federation's Anna Medvedeva claimed world winter duathlon titles earlier this week. The grueling race, set in Naturalandia, an adventure park in Andorra, Italy, featured a run, cross, country ski format, 3 laps of 1.35k running, 2 laps of 3.1k skiing, with 5 transitions. Athletes from Romania and Norway rounded out both the men's and women's elite podium. A few days later, Pesavento took the world title in the winter triathlon event, 2 repetitions of a 4k run, 6.4k bike, and 6.2k ski league, while Daria Rogozina of RTF won the women's race. Now, James, I don't have a lot to say about this because I've literally never watched a winter triathlon or duathlon in my entire life. But what do you think?
I mean, these things are hard work. The winter duathlons are hard work. Might be why some Russians are winning them. Well, I have a skeptical eye, as with the recent news that we've had coming out of Russia that when their athletes do perform, and that is a shame for the sport, really, that skepticism exists. But well done to everybody involved, and let's hope nothing bad comes out of it.
Didn't I see that it was shared in the MX group today that one of their figure skaters got done for doping? Yeah, I was like, figure skating, like fucking hell, really? Like,
and that's I mean, that she was really young, man. That almost on a coaching level equates to abuse. When you've got a figure skater in your care that young who's then prosecuted for doping. I don't think at that age I think you're susceptible to outside forces, and that's it's cruelty, and it shouldn't be the way.
I could go off on a little bit. I am going to go off on a little bit of tangent here, but it's still related. I thought watching the Winter Olympic opening ceremony for you triathlon fanatics who don't follow anything else. Winter Olympics are happening at the moment. The fact that Vladimir Putin was in there for the opening ceremony, considering Russia are technically banned from the Olympics, I was like, this is some weird mixed messaging if ever I've seen it. Like,
well, yeah, the gravy train flows ever on, mate.
It certainly does. Yeah. Then anyway, we could talk. I think we do. We speak enough about what's going on with Russia that it's getting a little bit boring, if I'm honest. So
we do.
Let's move on to some bad news. This came up this week. You'll hear a little bit more about this later in the episode with Macca. But Nicola Spirig breaks her collarbone and 2 ribs in a train ride accident. This article's from Tri247 John Levinson, the great man. Last year's Triathlon Media Personality of the Year award, mate. He got it for us, the MX Podcast Awards. And he writes, Swiss superstar Nicola Spirig has undergone surgery in Zurich Hospital after breaking 2 ribs and fracturing her collarbone in an accident during a training ride. The 2012 Olympic champion suffered the injuries on Sunday before being taken to Belgrist University Hospital, where she underwent surgery on Tuesday. The accident happened on the eve of Nicola's 40th birthday on Monday, but she came out of the whole experience just thankful the outcome was not worse. Writing in a post on her Facebook page, she said, I had an accident with my bike on Sunday during a training ride and suffered 2 broken ribs and a fractured collarbone. I was in very good hands at the university hospital and was successfully operated on this morning, but will only be allowed to train on a limited basis for the next 6 weeks. This means that I will not be able to start the season at Ironman in Dubai on March 5th as planned, but I'm glad that nothing worse has happened and I'm looking forward to later competitions. Many thanks for the great support from doctors, my team and environment. The trip to Dubai to race over the 70.3 distance in March was, of course, part of her preparation for the big goal of Sub7Sub8 project later this year. The Swiss star, along with Britain's Lucy Charles, will go under James Bale. We heard about this a little bit before maybe other people did because obviously through the sub project, but it was terrible. You never like to hear about anybody having an accident. And
it's such a shame. It's such a shame. Now, whether this will have an impact on her sub-8 preparation, we're unsure. But 40 years old, falling off your bike, I can tell you from first-hand experience that when you get up to those slightly lofty numbers, you don't bounce like you used to. And I hope that her recovery is swift and it doesn't derail anything she's trying to achieve. Because, I've said it on here before, and I've said it to you that Lucy Charles Barkley is a fantastic athlete, but Nicola Spirig was where my money was for the sub-8, big time. And I'd like to see her still be able to do that without an outside influence coming in. If she does get under sub-8, or she fails to get under sub-8, or she does get beaten by Lucy, or she does beat Lucy, I'd like that to be because of where she's at in that moment, not because of anything that's come in from the outside and changed anything, like a mechanical or an injury.
Well, again, I've had that conversation with Chris. We spoke about it, so I can tell you, I suppose. But it sounds like she's all on track. She can't swim, which is going to be a problem. But again, I think Nicola was never really expecting to. I think she's accepted that she's going to lose an amount of time to Lucy in the swim. Yeah. Apparently, all reports are she's back on the trainer. She's just going to be on Zwift. So apparently, she's already back on the trainer, getting everything ready. And as Chris will say again, I'm sorry, listeners, you're going to hear this twice coming from Chris. Will sound better. But Brett Sutton is a sort of coach, I think, who can, he'll shuffle things around. He'll make it work. The more I look into this event, the more I think about things. I am thinking that Nicola is going to surprise a lot of people. The one thing that I really wasn't aware of enough, and it's which frustrates me considering I talk a lot about how I don't think enough people give Nicola the credit she deserves, is just how good a runner she is. The fact that she's a two-time Swiss marathon champion. She can run. Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of people aren't factoring. Everyone's like, well, Lucy will take away the swim right away. And I'm not so sure, mate, because Nicola will have a gap to make up. But if Nicola gets that pacing team right and she closes that gap on the run, I think Nicola could outrun Lucy, and it could be something to watch, mate. So
yeah, man. I'm glad to hear she's back on the trainer. That's the beauty of breaking a collarbone, is that you can very quickly get back on the bike.
I think she was also worried that she might have punctured a lung, but it sounds like it wasn't. It was just a bit of bruising. So she's, all reports, very lucky. And again, you forget the risks sometimes. We've all had crashes and stuff, and you're right. It's part of it. So hopefully the other 3 guys, the other 2 guys and girl all manage to stay upright for the next forever, ideally. You never want to see anybody have a crash. No. So we'll talk. There's plenty of sub-8, sub-7 chat coming for you guys later in the episode.
Leave that till later on with your chat with Chris, eh?
Correct. Next thing, mate, comes from Kevin McKinn at Triathlon Magazine Canada, and it's that Flora Duffy is going to open her season at WTCS Yokohama. He says, remember when we were wondering if Flora Duffy might be looking at moving up to the half distance this year? Well, that might still be in the cards. It would appear that the 3-time World Triathlon World Champion has a sight set on a record-setting 4th title this year. She told Bermuda's Royal Gazette, her home newspaper, that she'll be starting her season at the WTCS Yokohama race in May, which seems like an apt place to start racing considering the biggest win of her career took place in Japan last summer. That will be my first race, and from there, it's kind of pretty busy racing from May through to November, she told the newspapers. So I'm going to enjoy these few months that I have right now and just train and be in one place before a busy year of racing kicks off in May. Duffy was also named a Dame Commander of the British Empire last year for her exploits and was ranked 11th on Sports Illustrated Top 50 Best Conditioned Athletes. Who knows how she tops 2021, but no doubt she'll give it a go. Jimbo, what do you think?
It's cool. I love it. She's fantastic. She's an amazing athlete. She's one of, the biggest performers in our sport, and she had a hell of a year last year, as we all know. I am really pleased to see her going for the WTCS title follow-up, as opposed to, straddling middle distance or WTCS and trying to do both. We've seen that sort of approach pass or fail a little bit of late. And, I think she would be a fool not to focus on the WTCS title this year, because I think if all goes well for her, mate, it's in the bag, and she can just keep building, because I don't see any signs of her slowing down. Do you?
No, absolutely not. Like, I look at this, and when I read it, I was like, yeah, of course. Like, to me, I've still got that burning hope in my heart, because I love that middle distance, and I want to see Flora go up to that 70.3. But what are you doing? What's the cat? What's happening with the cat?
I just thought I'd stroke the cat's tongue while you were talking. Carry on.
I'm going to avoid making some inappropriate comments about what you're stroking. I would love to see Flora race that 70.3 distance, because again, she's an athlete that I just think would absolutely destroy it and take that distance race into another level. But mate, the Olympics aren't far away. It's so weird to say that. Like, the Olympics are 2 years away. Flora Duffy could 100% win another gold, and why wouldn't you?
Totally.
Like, why
she's
wouldn't
got
she
time.
keep doing what she's doing?
The middle distance and slow down and do the middle distance racing and all that. She doesn't need the pressure of a sport that is influenced so hard by the participation of age groupers and amateurs who want to see her race middle distance. She doesn't need that pressure to push her in a direction she doesn't need to go yet. She makes her own choices, and her choice is to go the WTCS, and I think all power to her for that.
It is that thing, isn't it? Like, she has. I just think about that way that Flora got injured and she sort of vanished for a while, and then was it 2020 where she started to creep back in, and we were talking about, oh my god, Flora Duffy's like in really good form. Like, look at how well Flora's going, and then I think she started to win a lot of things. We're like, oh my god, Flora Duffy could actually maybe win the Olympics. To being like, Flora Duffy's going to win the Olympics, to she wins the Olympics, to she wins WTCS and then Xterra. Like, it's on it, like the first person to ever do the double.
So here's a question for you. Because during that period where she was injured, and she kind of went off the radar a little bit, and it took a long time to come back, because she really put recovering from that injury as a priority, that she was neglecting racing and really focusing on it. During that period, we saw with the rise of Katie Zaferes, and me and you were saying, well, the baton has been passed. Katie Zaferes is the new standard, the new bar for people to hit, and when she goes long, she's going to dominate the long course. Do you think we made an error there and we spoke too soon? Not in terms of winning the Olympics. Obviously, Flora has proved that she won the gold, but do you think that our deification of Katie Zaferes was a little early?
I would like to give it some context, if I may.
All right.
Like, I obviously have been doing this podcast for a few years now, and I'm the first to admit that before I wasn't the biggest follower of short course triathlon. I didn't really follow World Triathlon that closely, and it was Super League that really got me to start paying attention to the short course stuff, and that's obviously where Katie came on and dominated. So suddenly it was like, okay, Katie Zaferes in my head was very good. Flora Duffy's an athlete that I've obviously heard about, but I guess I didn't have the context for how good she is. I look at Katie Zaferes. Did we speak too early? Potentially. Do I still think that Katie Zaferes has the potential to absolutely dominate middle and long course racing? 100%. I stand by my belief that Katie Zaferes is a middle and long course athlete pretending to be a short course athlete, doing a very good job at it. I think Katie Zaferes is such a strength-based athlete, looking at her, that she will go to middle and long. And she's stepping aside. I believe she's taking time off to have a family for the next year, I think. But I think about what Katie Zaferes is going to come back to if she fully commits to that long course race and what we're going to see. And I don't think we spoke too soon. I think she really is going to be that person. And again, speak with Chris about this. I don't know.
I remember seeing her position at the Collins Cup on that time trial bike, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah, but that was weeks. Like she'd probably ridden that thing a handful of times. Like anything, give her time to refine, and I think we could see something. Like, again, we know the story. She literally got it like a week before.
Yeah, I know. I was.
Katie Zaferes is such a competitor, and I think again I get confused because we did the bonus episode with Chris this week, and then I did and I can't remember which was which, but I think it was the bonus. But I was talking to Chris about like this gap between the top women at the moment, and then there seems to be quite a big gap to me at the moment compared to the men's. And I think Katie and Flora and Georgia and Jess, and they're the women, and Ash Gentle, they're the ones who are going to come and they're going to really not just plug that gap, but push things to the next level. And I 100% think Katie could do that. And
doing what the Norwegians are doing on the men's side for the middle distance right now, basically, is bringing. I mean, it's been a long time coming. This talk of the short course athletes are coming. The short course athletes are coming. Chris has been saying that for 15 years. You know, and it's been a long time coming. They have been coming really slowly, but we are finally. I disagree with you there, because let's look at the people who've been successful over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Like we've got, anyhow, Daniela Reef, short course athletes. We've got Jan Frodeno, Javier Gomez, short course athletes. Like I think what happens is people are very quick to forget that people are short course athletes. Like even Christian and Gustav. Like Gustav, people like Gustav's a 70.3 expert. Like Gustav's not a short course. He's fucking top 10. He's like, you're right. He is a short course athlete. That probably comes from, again, the pressure of the amateur athlete to see everything through a middle and long course lens. But you're right. But Jan Frodeno, was he a short course athlete? What did he ever achieve at the short course?
Nothing, mate. What was that one what happened in Beijing? What year was that? Something good. One of the best finishes. Olympic gold. Yeah, a lot of people have those. A lot of people have those.
I'll ask him over a coffee on Saturday. Shall I ask him what he's achieved at short course?
Fuck you. That's bullshit. He's not there. He's in Andorra. Suck shit. You won't actually get to see him. He's in Andorra. So
I'm sure there'll be a cardboard cutout somewhere I can stand next to and
You'll take your own. You rock up with a Jan Frodeno cardboard cutout.
Me and Jan Frodeno. I take his cardboard cutout everywhere I go, and he takes mine. He's probably got his cardboard James Bale cutout in Andorra right now.
That's what he has behind him on the trainer. So whenever he's feeling, he looks behind, he's like, he's getting closer. I can't let him. I've got to keep my head down and keep working.
That's the motivation. White tri-shoot shot I've got when I'm doing this.
Hey, we should have asked. We actually need to get our audience to let us know. What should we get? What should the benchmark be to get you on the wall in Team Charles Barclay's Pain Cave? Nobody followed up with that. We need to make that happen, mate.
I charge royalties though. If they put me on their Pain Cave, every time I'm on one of their YouTube videos, I will be invoicing for that shit.
What I'll do is I'll get Reese to send you one of the sessions he gives me, and that can be the royalty. You can suffer as hard as I suffer because it's killing me. Yeah. Mate, I sat down, as I said yesterday, with Chris McCormack, and we chatted all about Sub7, Sub8 because it is getting alarmingly close, mate. Like it's months away now. The venue announcement, everything is happening next week. I know that. I've seen the stuff. So everybody, things are starting to gear up. We've been having lots of meetings about it, James. We know some of the stuff that's happening. We've seen some of the paces that are getting involved. And I had this great chat with Chris. So we're going to drop that interview in, and we'll be back afterwards. Well, it's been a while between drinks, but he's back on his own podcast. Christopher McCormack. Macca, welcome back to the MX Endurance podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
Always good to be on the old podcast, or the new old podcast.
You know, I was away a few weeks ago, and somebody had started listening. And they said, I went back to, I wanted to listen to the episodes from the start, and I got through about 2 of the old ones, and I just skipped forward about 30 of them.
I wanted the podcast. So does me and MG talking and recording ourselves. I can't believe
I still remember one of my best ones ever was you were talking about Lance Armstrong. Sorry. Was that you? That was so good. Like that introduction still really resonates every time I think about the good old days. But mate, how are you going? What's new? First time on in 2022. Firstly, can you believe it's 2022? It is the year of Sub7, Sub8. But mate, here we are.
I just can't believe it's 2022. Full stop. That's 22 years since the 2000 Olympics, man. Like
don't say that. I was again on a training camp a few weeks ago, and I was with this 21-year-old, like real red hot talent. His name was Jack. And I looked at him, I said, I just realized, mate, like you weren't alive when Sydney hosted the Olympics. Like that's something that you have no understanding of. It's like none at all. I'm like, that blows.
You don't know about the Y2K bug, mate. You don't know all these things that the world was going to end then, and you just don't understand the stress we're going through. But yeah, it's gone. Yeah, we sort of lost 2 years. It's like it was 2019, and then this COVID thing happened.
Well, that's what
and then we
said.
Came out the other side. It's 2022. You're like, dude.
2020 was 2 years ago. Like that blows my mind. But we are moving on, and that's what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about today, mate, on the show. Is I thought the fact that we are in a new year. It's a year full of optimism. We've got 10,000 more championships coming up this year. We've got Sub7, Sub8 finally happening this year as well. I thought we were going to get you on and have a bit of a chat about that, mate, because it is a year that, if everything goes according to plan, hopefully it will, it's going to be jam-packed. The thing I want to start with, obviously, is Sub7, Sub8, because that is coming at us very, very quickly. It feels like we've been talking about this, and it's probably different because behind closed doors, we've been talking about this for a long time. Yeah. But this has been something that's been discussed for years at this point, and we're finally here, mate. It's months away. How's everything going for it?
Well, the announcement comes out in
days.
A week. Yeah,
14th or 15th, I think.
15th, yeah. So, yeah, it's all ready to roll, ready to rock. The athletes signed, as everybody knows. The venue's locked down. Course approvals in place. Partners have come on board now. We're working through all that branding and stuff as we speak. And, yeah, it's full speed ahead. The teams, the athletes are picking their teams. Some interesting players coming on.
Good players, yeah.
Yeah, and just a lot of lessons learned about, we've talked about it a lot. We've been behind the scenes, but a lot of lessons learned where people thinking this was going to be a real easy attempt, and now they're realising the difficulty going through their test sets, especially the athletes competing, how hard it is to ride 51 kilometres an hour for 180K with a limited amount of paces and swapping turns and concentrating and focusing for such a long period of time. So I can't wait for the event. Not all the pacing teams are filled out yet, so I'm very keen, but there's some amazing little players in there, and that'll all be announced, over the coming months. So, yeah, before we know it, it's going to be here.
I don't know if you saw this, but Mark Allen's been talking a fair bit about the Sub7, Sub8, and he's been giving some predictions. I think he actually predicted 6:33 for the men and 7:33 for the women. I think Mark Allen is obviously one of the all-time greats of the sport, and somebody, when he speaks, we listen. And something that we discussed a couple of weeks ago was he was talking around the women, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, because he was saying that, the women, if you factored in the drafting, you'd be getting the women to ride at about, I don't know, like 41, 42, 43K an hour, compared to the men who we're talking about will be in the 50s. Do you think, one of the things I wasn't sure about was, do you think that the women potentially have a bigger gain to be made from the drafting impact on the bike compared to the men? Like, the men naturally probably ride they ride faster than women solo. But do you think that suddenly, if you were to put together a big group of women, we could potentially see those women make a bigger jump in the bike times than maybe the men would? Or do you think it's going to be relative all the way?
Look, the interesting thing is it's limited paces. I think when we first talked about it, everyone thought there was just going to be this big group and
50 people in front of them.
People, and these people just sit there. There's limited paces. You have 10 paces spread out over 3 disciplines. So you use 2 up in the swim that can't bike or run. You've only got 8 left. So it's not a slam dunk in that sense. And I think what the women are finding difficult, speaking with Lucy and Nicola, is finding those women that are capable of riding the pace they need to ride. There's pro cyclists out there that are doing it, but as they're saying, when I select a pro cyclist, that's all I get them for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so Lucy, for example, has opted to have no pacer in the swim, to give herself more paces for the bike and run. Others, she's the only one doing that, right? Of course, there's not many people that can keep up with her in the swim anyway.
Exactly.
But it's interesting, that strategic dynamic of how they're going to do it. And I guess to answer your question, looking at all the teams, men's and women's, I think everyone's going to travel quicker, for sure. Will the women go quicker than the men? Probably not, because
relatively, I suppose. Relatively, will the gains be relative?
Yeah, who knows? But the big takeaway from me is this is to some degree a team event, right? And let me throw the scenario out there. For example, that it's Christian Blumenfeld and Alistair Brownlee dive into the water together. They got their swimmers. Alistair technically is 2-minute better swimmer than Christian, mano and mano. Maybe not in a big group, but this is a mano and match race in the water than Christian. So 2 minutes up the road. Now let's say he's got, I don't know, Martin van der Poel as a bike rider, and he's got some serious pro horsepower up front, and Tony Martin and these type of athletes that are ex-pro tour guys, world time trial champions, right? And Christian opts to take Gustav Eden, and the match race is not only between Christian and Alistair, but it's a match race between your paces, right? So you're 2 minutes up the road. In a normal race, we sit there going, okay, Christian Blumenfeld probably ride him down, or maybe he won't, but they may hold each other. But there's the opportunity. I believe that Alistair is such a brilliant bike handler, a brilliant bike rider. He's a pro-level cyclist. He descends amazingly. He handles his bike well. And more so than the brute force and strength of Christian, who suits that triathlon dynamic where you just muscle your way and grind big gears and chunk away. I'm interested in that dynamic, and I think who's in those athletes pacing teams is going to be critical to the overall attempt.
Can I ask, and again, this is something that I'm not sure about, but is there the potential for the teams to come together and work together? Like, can the groups of 10 come together and suddenly become a group of 20? Is that possible?
No. They're not allowed to draft off any other team.
Okay.
Exactly the same rules as a Tour de France team's time trial. There will be lapping. There will be lap without question. We've got a 6-kilometre course. They're going to be doing it. By the time they get there, there'll be 24, 22 laps of that course to make up the 180.2. Everyone's like, oh, it was 180K, but that 180.2 kilometres is the official distance of an Ironman.
I've noticed you've got the tape measure out. I saw you out there literally measuring it.
We're getting it all, man. We don't want any. We want every distance to be spot on. It's not going to be one of those triathlons where it's almost there. It's important for it to be ratified. It's important for us to get the distances right because, it's just out of curiosity. For me, I'm really intrigued on just what they're capable of doing. And so I don't want any blowback on, it was only 178K. It's measured to the metre.
Now, the other thing we got to discuss is the news that came out, I think today, as far as we both know, so when this comes out a couple of days ago, but Nicola Spirig was obviously involved in a bike crash. Have you heard much? Is this going to impact things, do you think, or is it all systems still go, do you think, for Nicola?
We spoke to her. We sent her a bunch of flowers. We obviously heard the news. She had a crash in Zurich. She'd just come off a big training camp. She was preparing for Ironman 70.3 Dubai as part of her prep. She's broken a collarbone. She's had that pinned. Operation went well. She broke a rib. She thought she punctured a lung, but it's all bruising on the lungs. She's not going to be able to swim for a bit of time, and she's not. So that may influence her swim, but there's no effect on her indoor biking. She's going to ride the Zwift, and I think she's back on a bike session tomorrow. She's a rock star, and she adapts. She's crashed a bike a few times. She crashed from memory just before the Rio Olympic Games as well. So this is sometimes when you train with Brett Sutton, and I mean this with the utmost respect for Brett and that team, he's a marvelous coach in that sense. He sometimes this forced rest, and Brett's quite a good thinker on his feet. He'll find ways to make sure she's well in the game. I don't think it's going to have any effect. I think, speaking to Nick, she's prepared in the sub-7 attempt to give up 5, 6, 7 minutes to. In her head, the swim's an irrelevant beast, and she's the one I'm that really pointed out the importance of paces because she is building her team, saying, if Lucy's not taking a pacing strategy seriously and it's just picking some people because it's, I'll think of it, then she's going to get blasted because my team can ride her down. And if she does, it's game over. Right?
That's something that I wanted to touch on about is, do you think that there is a division between the athletes about the ones who are taking, like again, I'm just generalizing here, but do you think somebody like Christian who, he likes to race, he's got good stuff, he's got Casper, but he sort of does his thing. Do you think he is probably do you think there are athletes who are thinking of this as a whole with really considering those pace factors and who can I get to maximize my performance across all three? And you have the others who are going, I'm going to focus on my performance and I'll find some people who might be able to, I think they'll be good enough to sort of help. Like, do you think, is there a division between, is Nicola and say Alistair really starting to think about those things where you might have Lucy and Christian who are a bit more laissez-faire about the whole thing?
I know Alistair is. And it's really good to see Alistair really deep dive into this. Like I think he
well, it's his idea. The whole thing was.
Yeah, I think he likes. He's a real deep thinker, Alistair. Despite being an amazing athlete, he's a real deep thinker, and I think he really likes the enormity of the challenge, and he likes the science and the process and the planning that goes into an attempt like this. He's thriving on the information. He's a data geek at heart. He's looking at all this stuff.
Study
more
medicine,
than I ever anticipated. Yeah. He's been sitting in tunnels. We know. Joe and a whole bunch of them have gone through and done test games with him. He's appointed a project manager on this whole thing. It's really been interesting to see that the Norwegian team, they do everything behind closed doors. Really, it's all speculation. They're very test savvy. as we know, we've had them on the show. And but I'm really what my thoughts are in the last couple of weeks, having seen a lot, as I keep saying, coming back to, is we keep focusing on the individual athletes on the attempt.
Yeah.
Right? And Alistair and Nicola seem to be the ones that are shifting that narrative and going, okay, who are the best people I can put around me to ensure that I get to that position as quickly as I possibly can? And they went, there was talk in the early days of having pro cyclists, and they were talking about pro triathletes because they could use them across multiple distances. They were talking about Ironman athletes. We did a deal with the PTO, and they were bringing in, and they realised these Ironman athletes, they can ride 43k an hour all day, but they can't ride 51. So Alistair went through a whole process going, I'm probably better off getting short course triathletes and rotating my team out.
Yeah, I was going to ask, that was one of the things I wanted to ask, because we actually had this conversation within the MX group based on, again, when we had Lucy on a few weeks ago, she was talking about the fact that she wanted to have an all British pace team. Like, she wanted to keep that, the fastest time ever was Chrissy Wellington, British. So she sort of wanted to keep it. And we were discussing on the show, like, who do we think Lucy could source to have an all British team? And that's one of the things I was saying is I think that there'd be a lot of value in, say, having a Georgia Taylor Brown, a Beth Potter, a Jess Lemont, a Sophie Caldwell, because they don't have to do a 140.6 mile race. They can do a lap, take a break. They can do a lap, take a break. They can come in and out for certain sections. And I think that's something that people probably aren't.
Yeah. And then the question you need to say too, in Lucy, who grew up in Ironman racing, she came to triathlon from swimming. First event was non-drafting Ironman. She's not the most, we saw her in Super League. She doesn't have great bike handling skills. Correct. Fantastic bike rider in a straight line, reminds me of Spencer Smith. Great in a straight line, monsters of bike. But, this is a team time trial. The concentration, we talked about it a lot of times, Tim. Adam Hansen said no one's realising the concentration that comes into play, that you need to focus on that wheel in front, and it's draining. And, these ITU athletes are used to it, and moving around freely in a group is, okay, we take it for granted. But at those sort of speeds, problems can happen and things can happen, and she can drop a bike and bringing people like GTB, Georgia Taylor Brown, and Jess Lemont, and athletes that are capable, are used to pack riding and are good at working turns, I think would be a benefit to her.
Yeah, I think that's. I'll be honest. I think the announcements of the paces I'm probably most excited about. Like, that's one of the things that I'm really curious to see who they go with, because you're right. Like, we know who the athletes are, we know their credentials, we know the things they've achieved and where they're at. But what I don't know is what impact their paces will have on them, because you could have, Christian could rock up with Gustav, Kasper, a group of just other Norwegian triathletes, let's say, and then suddenly Alistair rocks up with literally superstars of sports, and it could completely change the dynamic, because you might end up having Christian going, I'm just going to muscle this like he does every race, and suddenly you're going to have, and then you'll have Ali who's going to finesse it and be like, I'm thinking about this from every single possible way. The thing I wanted to ask you, because this is something that I think we've just spoken more about this offline than we have on these sort of things, but we talk a lot about the fact that triathlon has a short memory. And one of the things I've really noticed recently is Alistair Brownlee is an afterthought with this event at the moment. People are not even considering Ali as a factor. It's Christian. Christian, you're doing 7:21. He's going to do this. So it's not a question of if he is going to do it. I think people who count Alistair Brownlee out do so at their own peril, because Alistair Brownlee is two-time Olympic champion, incredible athlete. You said it, probably the best racer to ever do the sport. Do you think Alistair Brownlee likes having the pressure taken off or being the underdog? Because it's not something that I think he's used to. Do you think he likes it? Or do you think that would put a fire up his backside going, I'm going to prove these people wrong, that they have made a huge mistake counting me out of this?
I think Alistair thrives on pressure. You don't win there's no bigger pressure than the Olympic Games, and especially a home Olympics in London, and he won that, and then defending that title in Rio. He's won Commonwealth Games golds, he's won World Championships, the guy got injured for 18 months, and we've got short memories, right? He had that Kona, the yarn one. We talked about that. Then COVID happened. Boom. We haven't seen him. He's been injured and come in and out. We did a couple of World Cups trying to make the Olympics, and went back from Ironman to World Cup. Never made the Olympics, and we haven't seen him race. So everyone's like, Alistair's done. I think he sees this as a huge opportunity. I think Alistair's made in his mind he's going long, and those Olympic days are over. That's always a good path to be on as an athlete. You have a clear direction. You have a clear guide. Christian's still swapping and changing. He's still got Paris on his thoughts. But I think Alistair what you're going to see from Alistair, I'm hoping, and what I'm seeing in his testing is the genius of Alistair Brownlee. What makes, sure, the physicality of Alistair's amazing, but his athletic IQ and his ability to think through a project like this and go, what is going to make me faster, I think is far beyond all the testing and that on the individual. And I think that's where you're potentially going to see Alistair's finesse. And him talking about bringing his brother in, primarily he's like, no one knows me better than Johnny. No one as well, but we've been training together since we were 10. He knows my moves, my head nods, my everything. We communicate without talking. Like that is and I'm sure Christian has that with Gustav potentially. But you need that unspoken alliance within your team. It's not just a matter of putting 8 athletes together and going, this is Jack, Jeff, Fred, Tom, good luck, and boom, and riding the pace. It is a planned effort, and I think Alistair sees that. He's going to pick the right team. I think he knows the strengths of Christian. I think he knows what he's capable of doing, and I think he thinks if he wins this thing, it's I told you so, and then we build into Kona. And it'll be a completely different narrative going into Kona if Alistair Brownlee's gone 6:45 and smashed Christian Blumenfeld.
Do you think the other thing we have to consider is the fact that St. George is a month before the attempt? We've got three potential favourites from that race doing sub-7, sub-8 in, say, Lucy, Christian and Alistair. Do you think that race is going to have an impact on this? And it could be both positive and negative. We could see, like you said, Alice could go to St. George, destroy everybody, win the thing by 10 minutes, and everybody's like, oh my God, why have we ever doubted Alistair? Or alternatively, Christian could go there and dominate people like it's a foregone conclusion. Or it could be the case that Lucy wins it and suddenly she's like, I won the World Championships. And maybe the sub-8 becomes a bit of I don't want to say an afterthought. I know she's incredibly motivated, but maybe the focus shifts a little bit. Like, I don't know. What impact do you see that race having on the sub-7, sub-8?
Well, I keep saying, rightfully or wrongfully so, just my personal opinion, St. George is a prelude to Kona. Like, yeah, sure, you're the world champion, but yeah, you're going to win that. But you've got to win Kona, right? Like, and yeah, okay, history will show that there was a world champion that year, but there's actually 2. And so they'll always go, who won Kona in 2022? And it'll be Joe Blow. So it's an important world championship race without question. It's going to be important, but they've still got to reset and go for Kona. And I think they all know that. You only got the title for 6 months. Like it's May, October. So it's the shortest world championship year ever for an athlete. But I think Lucy's going to be hard to beat in St. George. I think, Jan Frodeno, if he's racing St. George, is going to be very, very hard to beat.
So do I.
And from everything I'm reading, he seems to be saying he's going to St. George. I didn't think he would be, but
same.
Yeah. So, winning world championships, we can speculate. We've learned from Kona. But
that's what we do on this podcast, mate.
You got to speculate. But someone's got to do it on race day, and I think it would be fantastic if one of the guys wins that. Christian, Alistair, Lucy, Nicola, or Jan, to be quite honest with you. But, overall, I think as racers, they're going to turn up to sub-7 and, you might be, I don't really care, but you turn up and you're going to see the enormity of the event and go, shit, I should have given it more thought because there are going to be more eyes on this one.
And there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide out there.
We're tripling the amount of money that an Ironman spends on reach and broadcasting this thing and pushing this thing out. It's going to be huge, right? So people are going to know who you are. Oh, you're the one who lost to the other one more than they're going to know. Oh, you won the St. George, Utah event.
Ali's got 2 gold medals and he beat you at sub-7. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's got 2 gold medals and you won that sub-7 race too. Like, you know what I mean? To the non-converted people. So that's the importance of this race, I think, from an outside triathlon perspective.
The last question, mate, because we know we've got to go. I want to put you on the spot. And I dare say we're going to have this conversation a few times before the event. But on the spot, as things stand right now, who is going to go sub-7 and who's going to go sub-8?
Oh, geez. Without knowing their paces, if, I would have said Christian Blumenfeld, post that Cozumel event. But having seen Alistair's attempt at this and having seen him in healthy spirits and watching him and doing his whiffs and seeing him uninjured, I'm a fan of the guy, right? So I just think he's approaching it in the same way he probably approached his Olympic Games. And, I think they're both going to go under 7 hours. And what would be brilliant if one of them sprinted, I think Lucy Charles. Actually, no, you know what? If Nicola Spirig is up and back and I want to see her team and seeing the swimmers she's bringing in and seeing a couple of the bike riders that they're recruiting from Switzerland and some of the older women that are coming in for the marathon, she's got a lot of marathon paces. I'm not going to say, Lucy, this is an easy slam dunk for Lucy Charles, because the reason I say that, because it's the team. Lucy may have 5 minutes on her out of swim, but if the team of Nicola matches the team of Lucy on that bike, I'm telling you, Nicola Spirig will run 15 minutes out of this girl.
Mate, she's one of the most unspoken about, under the radar female triathletes of all time, Nicola Spirig. Chris, a pleasure as always. Thank you for joining us. I guess we'll have you on a few times before the event, but a pleasure as always, mate. Talk to you soon.
Done. See you, Tim.
That was stunning. Good chat, Tim Ford.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's like Chris says, the thing that and I said as well, I think what I'm getting more and more excited about the closer we get to this event is those other parts around the paces, and the fact that there is almost this divide happening where you've got like an Ali Brownlee who's taking the paces super seriously, and maybe the Norwegians who I'm not sure, it's not as clear yet, not as transparent yet, but like I think the paces could be like really what make the difference in this event. You could be the best athlete in the world, but if you have the right team of paces around you, that could, especially when you consider that the bike is going to be the biggest thing, like that could make the difference. I have
been banging the drum, mate, for do not get bloody triathletes to pace you on the bike. They do not know anything about a well-drilled team time trial in the Pro Tour. I would be approaching professional. I would split my team of pacers into groups. I would have the 2 swimmer pacers. I would have a pack for pacing me on the bike, and then I'd have some run pacers. And I would be looking at the athletes from the very highest echelons of their own sport. You know, I would be contacting Pro Tour teams and asking riders to come and be part of that bike, because a well-drilled team time trial unit will pull an athlete along like beyond anything a group of triathletes can muster.
I think the risk. There's a few things that we should also consider. But
let me add one thing to that as well. But it also would not only go faster, but it would negate the, I think, high risk of a group of triathletes not having the bike handling skills and taking each other out.
Yeah, I think that's an absolute factor. I think the thing that I hadn't thought about in my head, because I think a lot of people are probably the same, where we've got this idea that the paces are there for the whole thing, and it's a looped course. So you could literally have a group of athletes who do, like, this is why I think you probably might see some more short course athletes than we expect, because they have the pack skills. They can ride those crazy high speeds. They just don't have the same, 180K in their legs, for example. Like, let's say Lucy said she wants the all women, and we were talking about the short course women, but they could do a lap. They could do whatever the lap, I can't remember the distance, but they could do 1 or 2 laps, take a break for 10 minutes, do a lap. Like, there are other factors to consider other than simply they have to ride in a straight line and do 180K straight. Like, I'm really fascinated, because I think that's where the story is going to become. Like, we know the 4 athletes, and you're right. I know for a fact that there are going to be some big name cyclists who are going to be pacing, and it's going to be super interesting. Like, Lucy's apparently not having a swim pacer, which I'm like,
give me a woman in the world who can keep up with Lucy Charles Barkley on the swim. It's an irrelevance to her. She doesn't need a swim pacer.
Correct.
She's one of the best swimmers in triathlon, male or female.
No, she's one of the best swimmers, mate.
Yeah, without question.
I guess, like I said, we saw Katie keep up with her at the Collins Cup, speaking of Katie earlier in the episode, but you're right. Like, I think if anything, I thought maybe it would be the same speed, just at a lesser effort. But again, like, I love it. I love the fact that they all seem to have their different approaches to it. And like, we're seeing that narrative where Nicola, it's all about the run. Like, she's just like, I'm back in that run, and I'm not going to let her have too big a gap on me, because I'm going to come for her on the run. So anyway, mate, what's the next part of the podcast?
Welcome to the down low on the PTO. Mate.
That's very quiet and mysterious.
They speak. I can't hear myself today for some reason. I think my headphones are in really noise cancelling mode, so I can't hear my own voice. They speak and we listen. No, we speak and they listen, mate. It's a couple of weeks ago. Well, we listen to them as well. It works both ways.
I understand you've got that cat staring at you, mate, but you need to just chill out. Stop feeling the pressure.
I've lost my momentum.
Do you want me to take over?
No. I think a couple of weeks ago, there was an announcement, wasn't there, by the Professional Triathletes Organisation that they were going to be doing age group racing at their new Pro Tour events across the world, culminating in the Collins Cup. Now, they'd released the prices of the age group racing, and there was a bit of a furore around it because they were quite expensive. Now, I don't think anyone would have batted much of an eyelid at these races being as expensive as they are, other than the fact a few weeks beforehand, the PTO put out their own press release post on whatever social media platform it was, stating that the prices of their age group racing was going to be significantly lower than anything else on the market. Now, when these prices came out, yes, there were some savings when you look at active fees but it wasn't much of a saving. It wasn't enough of a saving to make the likes of me and you or any other average age grouper turn his head to his or her head and go, oh, well, that's a lot cheaper than you essentially you feel like you're shelling out the same amount of money. Now, we gave them some feedback from this through the podcast. Plus, I had a chat with the PTO directly. It wasn't. It was friendly feedback, simply stating our concerns as consumers, really, rather than commentators. And they've responded, mate. We got a message, I think, the evening the podcast went out from Sam saying, good podcast day, boys. Good to hear your thoughts, and the hold tight because we've got our thinking caps on and things are coming. And the Professional Triathletes Organization yesterday announced that its professional athlete board has unanimously voted to reduce the age group registration pricing at its inaugural PTO tour. Having announced the 3-part race series in early January, the PTO's commercial team received immediate feedback from the PTO professionals that the pricing of the events did not align with the goal of its growing the sport. The PTO tour events are owned by the PTO professionals, and as such, the professionals are the hosts and age group athletes are their invited guests. Apologising to the age group community, the PTO professionals for the error, the PTO's CEO, Sam Renouf, said, start quote, "We are excited to add age group racing to the PTO tour this year. This will allow fans to not only watch the greatest athletes on the planet, but to step up the challenge themselves in competing at the very same event. In planning this, we looked at other bucket list events, including World Championship triathlons and major marathons with closed road courses, grandstand seating, and a chance to get closer to pro athletes, ancillary events for friends and family to enjoy, and unmatched event merchandise. Our goal is to create unforgettable VIP moments for every age grouper. Having often shared the concern that age group pricing is too high, we initially priced our events lower than the championship events we took inspiration from, with the aim of making the sport more accessible. We also sought to remove the pain points in such races, such as mandatory extra fees and continual upselling for items we feel should be all-inclusive. However, having spoken with our PTO professionals, we quickly realized that although we believe PTO tour events will soon become bucket list races on every fan's calendar, this is not a status we can automatically assume. Like an ambitious young athlete, we must first earn our stripes through proven results before we can be compared to the greats. We apologize for not recognizing this at the outset and hope that the triathlon community can forgive the error. We are grateful for the structure of the PTO, which provides the chance for the immediate feedback of the PTO professionals when we've misstepped. Following a unanimous vote from the PTO athlete board, we have subsequently reduced all age group pricing by 50% and will automatically issue a refund to all existing entrants to reflect this." Thank God that's over. That was a long read. Bloody hell.
You did well, James. You did very well.
Whenever I'm reading a segment verbatim like that, the only thing that's in my head is do better than Tim, do better than Tim. He always fucks this up, do better than Tim, do better than Tim. And I that's my standard, and I'll hold myself to it.
Oh, mate, I'm glad that I can motivate you in more ways than one. It's good to hear. I want to thank the PTO for this. And before we talk about this specifically, I also just want to say, you want to talk about the open dialogue that the PTO has with their fans. We're recording this before this has even been made public. They got this to us early so that it would be able to be discussed on this week's podcast. So that, that's the thing that I'd be so impressed with. We try to talk to all the brands out there. We have never had any response, anything ever from anyone at Ironman, literally ever, not once. Ever. Challenge, no. Ever. Literally, that not the slightest hint of anything. And head office.
Got to add
head
in,
office.
They did give me a free entry to Ironman Copenhagen.
Yeah, but that's not their head. That's a local office. I'm talking about we've tried to get Messick on the podcast. We've tried to anyway. Like the fact that the PTO go out, firstly, they were like straight away, like, guys, we heard you. We appreciate the feedback. Leave it with us. Not because we were worried, mate. We were both like, shit, are we going to piss them off?
We were
if
expecting
we say
this? a combative response, weren't we? We were like, because of the experience we have with other entities like Ironman and how they will stand their ground and fight their corner because they're all about shareholders and profit. Whereas the PTO is genuinely about supporting the pros and growing the sport. So it was really refreshing to feel that we could put the criticism where we did, not in an unkind way. We're never like we really like the people at the PTO and the job they do and all the individuals that we know there. But it was just this is where we stand, and their response was refreshing. And look, I'll let you carry on now. I interrupted you.
No. What I was going to say is like, how good is this, mate? Like, I think this is such a, again, like we talk a lot on this show about how, and we have people like, why do you guys do a segment every week on the PTO? It's because we believe in the PTO. Like we are trying to buy into their vision of this future of the sport, and we think this is something practical we can do to support them. And then it's moments like this that are like, this is why we do it, because this is an organization that I think really, really do listen. And they take this, and they'll admit when they've made a mistake. They'll admit when things can be improved. Like they're not, as you said, combative. They're not like going, no, this is what we said. This is what we're doing. You don't like it, piss off. No, they're like, no, hand up. We've misread this. Something's come up. We didn't make the right decision. Let us fix it. Like that's the thing that I think is
the communication as well is different. I think they're trying to bring the level of communication and openness and information for the age groupers to a level on a par with other professional sports that you see out there, because it's not what we've had to date. Whenever Ironman do something, it's difficult to get the information, understand what's happening when. It's like an old clunky 1980s computer that is being modernized for a nice shiny Apple.
Mate, now let's get into the nitty-gritty of it a little bit, because I'd like to pick up the conversation we had a few weeks ago. We were talking about the pricing. So if we now know that the prices are 50% less, so we're looking at $199 roughly, let's say $200 US for an effectively a 70.3 race with photos included, no additional fees, high quality merchandise. Does that meet your criteria of making the sport more accessible, and do you think this will enable more people to come and experience it and potentially take up the sport?
Without question, I think that's a price point that you can get on board with. Certainly, being it's going to be starting with a 1. You know how marketing works, isn't it? It's going to be like 199 or something, and it's going to help people. I think it's a good price point for what you're getting, certainly. And I think they should keep it. I don't think, even when they've proved themselves the greatest events in the sport, I don't think pushing those prices up to match that is particularly the play. I think certainly keep a tier available for those people that need the cheaper access to races, because ultimately, mate, sport's about participation, and the more people that have access to and feel included and embraced and welcomed into any sport is for the better, really.
I also think this is something that's not necessarily probably considered, but when you actually start to think about it as well, could be good, is if you suddenly are charging those really high prices for those big races, there's an element of pressure. Like, people go to a world championship event expected to perform. Like, they're not going just to have a good time, not to make up the numbers. And again, I understand that everybody's, the value of money is not the same for everybody, but I'm suddenly thinking that if you go to a race for, as you said, has $100 pricing point of it, you take away the photos, we're looking at about $150-ish, really. You're probably not going to be taking it as serious, which means that the atmosphere is probably going to be more positive too. Like, there's going to be more of a party feel or something, and then you're going to have the races that follow. Like, I just see, because suddenly it's not this super high benchmark. It's not being people like to sacrifice so much and potentially being underwhelmed by the offer. Like, I just think we're probably going to see that those events, even for the pros, are going to be in a much better positive light, because people are going to end up having a better experience. Because it's you know what I mean? Right. Like, it's not something people probably consider. Like, I just think it's going to put people in a better frame of mind.
I agree, and that experience and what you see on the ground and the way the atmosphere greets you on the ground is critical to your experience of a day and a race. Even if you're going to watch as a fan or a family member, you want to feel like the event is there. It was kind of like when I went to the Collins Cup last year. Did you come to the Collins Cup, or was it just me? It was just me, wasn't it? Yeah. So it was me and Jeffrey Jefferson, actually. We went to the Collins Cup, and when we first arrived, they shepherded us towards the VIP area to watch the swim start. And we hadn't orientated ourselves at all. We turned up at this VIP area for the swim start, and it was like a barriered off piece of ground with a couple of seats in it. And there was a bar, but it only had energy drinks and crisps. And I was like, my whole experience was just like, oh, this is the VIP area? Then is it? There's just a bar with energy drinks and crisps and a bit of seating. And then later on, they shepherded us out of the swim start over to this amazing building with a big open plan bar with all these wood fires.
We get it. You had a
burning.
good time. Come on.
And it's a massive buffet and a free bar. And my whole experience was just like, oh, this is what I was after. And it was quite the day.
Any opportunity to rub it in, hey? I get it. You had a good time at the fucking Collins Cup, mate. Well done. Well done.
We're going to race this year. Me and you are going to race the Collins Cup. We'll do the age group together, won't we? Yeah.
What's the bet? What are we racing for?
Oh, good Lord. I mean, I've had a broken ankle and a dodgy wrist for the start of the year, and you're getting trained by a coach who's putting you through the ringer like no one has ever seen before. So, I mean, I don't think any sort of bet or wager is acceptable at this point.
You're sounding scared, mate. You're sounding scared.
Unless we're going to handicap ourselves somehow.
We can handicap. We'll handicap. I'll give you a handicap.
Are we in the same age group now? Yeah,
what are you now? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
35 to 39.
35 to 39, yeah.
Oh, that's so depressing.
Anyway. Jazz, eh?
Do you know what I realised yesterday, James Bale, is that we have now released 22 episodes of the bonus podcast. That's 22 pieces of bonus content available exclusively to MX Endurance members, which means if you come and sign up at mxendurance.com/podcast, you get access to 22 episodes, most of which are recorded with Chris. I think there's 2 that aren't, but you can't hear them anywhere else. It's impossible to hear them. They're things about Lance Armstrong, they're things about Christian Blumenfeld, Gustav Iden. We talk about all sorts of things with Chris, and the best thing about them, James, is Chris says the stuff that he's too scared to say on these public-facing podcasts because he knows that it's in MX, and there's no snitches in MX. We like to keep things on the down low. So there's literally never been a better time, James. You can come sign up for 1 month, and you can download 22 episodes. That's roughly 20 hours of content at your disposal. If you've got a training camp coming up, you've got you don't know what to listen to in the long run, 22 episodes of the bonus podcast, as well as exclusive partner discounts, access to our community, our team of experts, a whole suite of benefits. It also supports this podcast to continue doing what we're doing, so that when we're at the Collins Cup, we're not just racing, we also get the microphones out and do some coverage for you guys as well. It's all part of it. If you head to mxendurance.com/podcast, that's where you can find out, that's where you can sign up, and that's where you can come and part of the fun, contribute to the podcast, give us questions, topics, all that stuff. When we have guests on, we get your questions. It's a good way to get involved and get more of the podcast that we hope you love. But James, if they want to find out other things about MX Endurance, where do they do so?
I didn't think you were ever going to stop talking. I thought he's just gone. He's on some sort of spiel.
After you, with that fucking quote thing you read before, you're giving me a hard time about talking for too long. Jesus, mate. You know what? I'm happy to defer the news reading of this show to you if you like. You can be the one who, and I'll just sit there and go, yeah, it's great, mate. Like I really like. I would happily just give the opinions if you prefer. That's next week, mate. You're doing it. Next week, you're leading the show. You can do the introduction and everything. I'll just sit back and cruise on Easy Street going, you can even come up with a nickname for me. Talking too much. Ridiculous. What a fucking...
If you want to find out more,
should we tell people about your lamp story from before we hit record, mate, where you were a Halloween story, Jack-o'-lantern James Bale? The patience of your podcast imparted to allow you to have decent life so you don't look like a serial killer?
You should have seen the deconstruction that went on in the background of this room that I'm in. I had to take an extension cable around the edge of the room so I could reach a lamp over here. Otherwise, it was all rather this, wasn't it, to begin with? But no,
it was much worse than that, mate. It was quite scary.
The sun's come up. If you want to find out more about MX Endurance, head to mxendurance.com or search MX Endurance on Facebook or at MX Endurance on Twitter or Instagram. If you want to follow me, I'm at bailed@James85 on Instagram, or you can follow Tim at T414 on Instagram. Please jump onto iTunes, give the show a review, do it in the podcast app, makes it super easy, really helps us out. And if you like what we're doing, tell a friend, help us grow the podcast, and come to Utah, because we're going to have some fun in Utah, aren't we? And if you've got suggestions, guests, or comments, send an email to podcast@mxendurance.com.
I thought you were never going to stop talking then, mate. I was sitting there going, is this ever going to end? Is this ever going to end? Is he going to finally shut his trap? All he's done is talk, and I'm sick of it. No, we're looking at maybe ducking over Yokohama after St. George and going to watch the WTCS event, which could be cool.
Well up for a bit of that, yeah. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Well, enjoy Girona. Say hi to Jan. Say hi to Joe. Say hi to the Triathlon Mockery boys and all that stuff. I'm sure you'll spot everybody. I'm sure you've taken your recording equipment so you can sit down with Martin Van Riel and Vincent Louis and Yella Gaines and Taylor Spivey and everybody else who's over there. Have a blast. Don't send me too many photos because I don't want them.
Big weekend coming up. Lots to do this weekend.
Yeah, me too. Can't wait. Yeah. Just going to kill myself training again. It's going to be awesome. No. It's not like I have a race coming up in 2 weeks I need to prepare for or anything. Fantastic. Jimbo, a pleasure as always. See you next week.